Hi everyone, welcome back. We're going to go ahead now and we are going to use our black tapered marker, and we're going to go ahead and try some inking techniques that will help you to practice working with your marker to get a little more variation out of your line and to build eye-hand muscle control. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to start dropping a couple of straight lines. Now with this, I'm very specifically going to start at the top of the page here, and I'm going to pull a line. As I'm doing so, I'm just using my arm and not using my wrist. Just doing a straight line going down. Next one, I'm going to do it one more time. Just a straight line going straight down, not using my wrist. There we are. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and vary the pressure of the pen as I pull my line. So this time I'm going to start nice and thin, and then I'm going to push heavy and light, heavy and light, push heavy, a lighter touch, heavier touch, lighter touch. So we see we get a nice variation in that pen stroke. So instead of going back in and shading something and going back and doing double work, you can get a thicker line or imply a taper of a line just by switching the weight on the pressure of the pen. So again, thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, thin. You can see right there, we get a nice, again, that tapered line coming on down with that variation. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a row of circles. And these, I'm going to do this just to show you a very thin, light line using my entire arm and not using my wrist. Okay. 3 light lines, fairly thin. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change that up. I'm going to apply pressure to it, but I'm going to do it in a very specific way. We're going to say that there's a light source on the right-hand side and it's shining light over this direction. So that means the left-hand side of each of those circles, the ink is going to be a little heavier. I'm going to apply more pressure to it. So let's go start with a nice thin line, and then thicker, and then it goes to get thinner and back up. Try it again, thin to thick, back up, and thin, thicker, and back up again. So you see we get 3 tapered lines now where we get a nice sort of thin to thick line, thin to thick on each one of those, much more different than the flat, thin lines at the top. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and try this again, but this time I'm going to go ahead and apply this to a swirl. So I'm going to start with a heavy swirl in the line that bumps. Put good pressure, and then as I pull up, I go to the left, it's light, on the right it's light, and heavier on the dark, on the left, and light, and dark, and light. See that? Try it again. This heavy line, and then lift it up, and then down heavy, and lift it up, and down heavy, and lift it up. One more time. Down heavy, and lift it up, and heavy, and up, and heavy, and up. You can see all 3 of them, you get this really beautiful, interesting tapered line here, where you get this thin on the right side, thicker on the left side on each one of those. So you're able to get something a little bit different out of each line. Now, I'm going to try this one more time now with this time 3 boxes. And I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 sides of the box with a thin line and 2 sides of the box with a heavy line, and all in one stroke. So I'm going to go start off first with here, I'm going to go nice and heavy, and then I taper up, lift, and lift. Almost get a 3D box. So I'll try it again. Heavy, heavy, and then lift, lift. Get that. Again, creates the illusion of something 3-dimensional. One more time. Heavy, heavy, and then lift in the same stroke. And don't lift the pen up. And do that all 3 times. Yeah. So again, I'm creating the illusion of weight without lifting the pen up. One stroke only. Oftentimes knowing where to start and when to stop when you're pulling in your line is very important. Let's go ahead and try just the exact opposite. Let's go ahead and start this time nice and thin, and I'll go thick at the end. So I'm going to start nice and thin, light line, and then it gets heavier and heavier. Then I pick up. So again, thin line, and then it gets heavy, heavy, and I pull up. And you notice at the very end here, I sort of taper that line to go back into the previous line that I had. Again, so I'll go nice and thin. Oh well, thick, and then taper up. So I changed up that one. But you see, just by changing that, again, you can add weight or a sense of shadow to any one of those. Now, we'll try one more thing on here. And this time with the last one here is I'd like you to just go ahead and just try a squiggle. Just try a little squiggle and heavy. And back up again. And heavy. Back up. And heavy. And we'll see as we do that just a little bit there, you get a really beautiful, interesting line. Now, this is what I would like you to do on a page in your sketchbook. Draw yourself 4 lines, 2 of which will be thin, 2 of which will have a varied weight, 6 circles, 3 of which will be very thin, hardly any pressure, and the other 3 will have this heavy tapered line. 3 spirals, again, thin to thick, changing up the pressure and the weight, light on the right, heavy on the left. Then you'll do 6 squares, changing the placement of the thicker line, starting out with a thick line, going to a thin, thick to thin, thick to thin. And on the next one, experiment. Try thin into thick, or thin thick at the bottom. So you're going to play with that a little bit. And on the last one, certainly try a row of at least 6 squiggles like this. Each one is roughly about 2.5 inches long. And starting off with a real thin line, tapering it thick and heavy, and then nice and light again. So thin to thick to thin, thin to thick to thin. And each time you'll notice you're going to get a very different kind of line. So that is your next project. Have fun.